Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today we're going to sort of do a bit of a mixed review. There's a lot of things I sort of skimmed over in the past few lessons that I could have gone over, and we're going to dedicate today to reviewing that. First, though, I'm going to do a quick review of what we went over last week. If you weren't here, it'll be a quick refresher, and if you were here, it'll still be a quick refresher. So let's start with this chart. Last week's lesson focused on what we call the kosoado words, which refer to the position of objects and the position of people relative to you or the person you're speaking to. So you can see here, if you don't remember how these words are pronounced or how these characters are pronounced, I'll also mark that in. Right. So this is ko, so, do, and this is re, no, and ko. So if we line up the table, you can see that this first column, the re column, refers to talking about objects in general. We're not naming the objects, we're just pointing to an object and saying this one, that one. So we say kore, you would be pointing to an object near you, but not near the person you're speaking to. Sore refers to something close to the person you're speaking to. Are is used when we're talking about an object far away from both you and the person you're speaking with. And dore means which one. Say that you're trying to figure out the price of two different items, and you want to specify which item, you would say dore. And we went more into specifics on that in the previous lesson, so you could see a review of that more specifically, how we use these in sentences. And then similarly, the nos, kono, sono, ano, dono, are used with specific nouns. So we would say, like, if we wanted to talk about an item specifically like a pen, we would say like kono pen. If we wanted to talk about a pencil, we would say like kono enpitsu. We would be saying this pencil as opposed to just this, or this one. So re is more general, no we use with a noun to make it more specific. And then this last column, ko, refers to location. If you're asking like where the bathroom is, you would ask toire wa doko desu ka? And then if it's near you, but not near the person that's speaking to you, they would say soko da. It's over there, near you. Koko da being here, soko being there, asoko being far away from both you and the speaker, and doko being where. So that was the main thing that we talked about last week. This week, we're going to follow up with some more... It's very mixed in what we're talking about. The topics aren't particularly cohesive compared to what we talked about last week. So it'll be sort of a mixed review here. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the particle wa and how it's used to determine or to denote your state of being. So saying like watashi wa, that's like I am. Kimi wa, that's you are. And let's do this as an example now. Let's say I want to refer to myself. Let's say... Or actually, let me just say what the particle is first. The particle we're going to talk about first is mo, which is typically used for also. As an example, I could say erioto. Eh. Erioto wa vi chuba this. Or, it's a very English sentence actually. Elliot is a VTuber. VTuber. if someone else was agreeing with me, or if I was saying that someone else was a VTuber, we could say something like, let me actually make sure I don't write this incorrectly, because I think I might write it backwards if I don't check up first. Yes. Since you're in my chat, I could say Mora-san. And it's important that if you're not referring to yourself, that you also use a proper honorific. Mora-san mo VTuber this. So this says Mora is also, and that's where that mo comes in from. That's what that represents. A VTuber. The important thing to note about this mo is that it can be only used and only use mo in agreement. So if you aren't the same thing, if you're not both that same topic, then we can't use mo. If you're saying that one person is and one person is not, you would have to say... Actually, that leads us to our next topic. If you're saying that you are not... Oh. Project Ugly Bastard, thank you. Welcome to the classroom. I hope you're ready to learn. So... we can only use mo in agreement. Mora mo VTuber desu. But if someone isn't a VTuber, we have to talk about how we would say is not. We make a new layer. And that's going to be our next term. And it's also going to be... It's going to be ja nai. And it's very... You hear this a lot, janai. And that is... Actually, I don't think I need to use the Y. Nai. Not. So let's say that we're talking about myself again. Because, you know, I like talking about myself. So, janai is used to negate a statement. So... instead of ending with this, which is just the end of a sentence, to negate a statement, we use ja nai this. Janai desu. So, we know that. While I am still learning, I guess you could say that I am a student. In the case of this stream, I am the teacher. So I would say... Eddie... Me too. I too wish I'm hoping to be able to visit after all this blows over. I was supposed to go last year, but... You know... Things happen. Ryoto wa... Gaku... Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to go this year, though. Gakusei. Ja... Nai... This. So this here says Elliot is not a student. And the not comes from the janai. And just as a highlight, figure this out again, we say, Erioto wa gakusei janai desu. And this here. Yeah, that is actually what inspired me to start learning. And I've been on this journey for a while, very on and off. I've kept up with certain aspects of the study. I'm glad it's been helpful. This here. Let me rewrite it here. I think I should get into a habit of doing this, because sometimes I like to write the kanji out. But I think it's useful if I also explain what that kanji is, more specifically. This is gaku se, or student. And normally, this here, gakusei, the meaning behind these characters, this means learning, learn, study. While this character here refers to usually life. So study life, you know, someone who is in the middle of their life studying. They are a student, gakusei. And so yeah, instead of saying erioto wa gakusei desu, which would say that I am a student, we say erioto wa gakusei janai desu. The janai is to negate a sentence. So if we wanted to say that, if we wanted to talk about three people, using the previous example with mo and janai, we could do the following. Let's see. We could say I just want to make sure I'm not going to write the mo backwards, because katakana will always throw me off. So, in this case here, Mora-san wa ga e. I'm going to be consistent with this. I'm going to write out student in kanji every time. Thank you. I'm glad you find it peaceful. Gakusei. This is also helping me practice my Japanese writing. Thank you. I'm glad you think that I am a good sensei. Mora-san wa gakusei desu. So, Mora is a student. And then we say, I guess this is how you would pronounce Arthur. Let me make sure I remember how to write sa. Asa. Asa-san. And then, since he's also a student, you would say Asa-san mo gakusei. Mo being also. This. Arthur is also a student. So also, that's the mo. And then erioto wa gakusei janai e desu. For Tooth McGurrick, welcome to the classroom. I hope you're ready to learn. We haven't gone over too much yet, and this is a pretty good review of what we just went over so far. Elliot is not a student. And the not is covered in. Thanks for the host, Amora. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And that janai represents not. So mo we use when in agreement of a previous topic, in this case both being students, while janai is used to negate a statement. Because I am not a student, we can't use mo. The topics aren't in agreement. If we were saying that we're both not students, you can't say that, but since it's not in agreement with the previous topic, we can't use mo. And actually, that's really all that we're going to talk about for particles so far. The next things that I'm going to mention are going to be some sentence enders. We've talked a lot about ending the sentence with this, and I'm going to introduce a couple of... These are more like colloquial terms. They're more conversational. And these terms you also hear a lot when you hear quirky anime characters talk. So the first one is... This is going to be sentence enders now. Ne. Or, right? So the only sentence ender... Hey, Atlas! The only sentence ender we've talked about so far, aside from this, is ka. And we know that ka, when we end a sentence with, let's say, nanji desu ka? We're asking, what time is it? It's alright, I don't mind chat at all. So ne is another, it's similar to ka in that it's questioning, but it's more like, right? You see? So for example, and I'm going to talk about myself again because I really just did that in my lesson plan multiple times. I'm like holding my notebook in my hand and realizing that a lot of these sentences are about me. Huh. Erioto no. Gonna throw a new word at you. But if you're someone who watches a lot of VTubers, this word might be helpful for you to understand what kind of a stream or what you're going to be watching. Erioto no. This term here. This kanji that I'm going to throw at you. You'll see a lot if you watch a lot of Japanese VTubers. Erioto no haishin. Oh, I should actually remember to put an honorific after my name in this case, if I'm referring to myself in the third person. Just for, proper form, I'm going to do that. It would probably be irresponsible for me to drop that. Erioto-san no haishin wa... And I'll say this word. You might recognize the word. It looks like hieroglyphics. Yeah, it really does. And I should also be writing out the reading of it. Erioto-san no haishin wa tanoshii desu ne. So the way we read this out, because there are some new viewers, there's quite a few new viewers today. So the way we read this is Erioto-san no haishin wa tanoshii desu ne. And for questions in Japanese, we don't actually need to use question marks because the sentence ender essentially serves as that. Where's my cursor? There we go. So what this says is it dark in here? I mean, I am at a blackboard. You're not seeing anything? It might be you then. Elliot's stream are fun, right? Erioto-san no haishin wa tanoshii desu ne. So, when we end with ne, it's like you're asking like a confirmation, like right? Desu ne? And again, just to clarify some of the kanji that I just wrote, usually when I choose to write things, it's because I think the kanji is either easy or usually something you'll see a lot, which these two fall into. This here, just as a sidetrack, haishin is the word for stream. Whenever you see this symbol, that means that you're going to be watching a stream. This here, this reads as tanoshi, or fun. Let me use some different bracketing here so I can haishin. So streams, fun, and then the ne, that's the right. That's like you're asking that question that you think they are fun. That's what ne is. Desu ne. And there's also yo, or I tell you. It's really kind of weird. This one, I actually copied this example pretty closely from the book for this one because it's kind of hard for me to, like, I guess still as a native English speaker, I don't fully get the direct translation of this. I, like, understand the meaning. It's supposed to be, like, an emphasis. It's supposed to, like, sort of emphasize the statement that you're making. So when I say something like boku wa... Oh, cool. Glad to hear that it's working. Boku wa... And let me write this. Kyoshi. Kyo... And then shi. Desu yo. What this roughly translates to is, I am a teacher, you know? So it's supposed to emphasize, if I just say boku wa kyoshi desu, I'm just saying I am a teacher. I'm just making that statement. While saying boku wa kyoshi desu yo is emphasizing that, yeah, I am a teacher. So adding that yo adds that sort of emphasis to the end of your statement. So these are the two sentence enders I wanted to cover. They are pretty common from what I've, like, just from what I've experienced watching and reading things. Especially ne. You hear people, or even they just say ne alone, and it has that same connotation. I mean, while Japanese isn't my area of study, I still am a teacher. So, I think the years of experience there are helping me be able to deliver this information to everybody. And I think it's really... I think being a teacher and being able to express things and people letting you know that they understand it is just a really rewarding feeling. So being able to do that in a subject that I'm not confident in, but a subject that I really want to get better at, I think it really helps that I'm able to share this with everyone. And they do say that when you're learning, the best way to retain that information is to teach it to others. So I think really, if you ever want to, like, learn or try something new or get better at something, I think it's important to be able to do something like this. I think being able to teach others, even if it's not in a stream, but with people that you know, I think it's really important to, like, try and get that kind of experience. So, what I'm going to get to next, as I said, this is a very, very mixed review. The next topic I want to talk about, I was actually going to make this a question of a day, but I thought it would be a little bit too broad. As some of you may know, I'm glad to hear you might be finding some words of encouragement. So, as a joke, you usually hear people say, like, if you've ever heard like those like people mixing Japanese and English, you'd see people saying like "ariga," thanks, gozai much, or like "kudasari," or I don't remember. I think that one's wrong. But anyways, what I was saying, I think that was completely off topic. There's two common ways to say please. There is Kudasai. ThereThere's Kudasai, and then there is Onegai Shimasu. So the difference between these two, Kudasai and Onegai Shimasu. And normally, this would be in a situation where I would write out the kanji, but I feel like it's really common where you see it written out as the hiragana. There's a lot of words that do have kanji, but end up more often than not getting written out in their hiragana instead. So for those kinds of situations, I usually want to stick with the reading that you'd be seeing more often. So Kudasai and Onegai shimasu. These are both requests. They're both ways to ask please. However, and I read this in my book, and I wasn't completely sure about it from just reading it, but this morning, actually, on my recommended YouTube feed. And yeah, it's always important to improve. It's always important to get better at whatever it is. And I mean, just being able to communicate and understand is very good already. It's just something you have to keep on working at. So Kudasai is more informal. I actually saw a YouTube video recommendation on my feed today where it was someone who, I guess, lives in Japan and speaks Japanese regularly, where they actually said that Kudasai could be seen as rude, which I didn't know that. I know that it was informal, and I guess speaking informally to people that you don't know could be seen as rude, so that connection makes sense. So Kudasai is informal and apparently is also used for physical objects. So say that you're hanging out, you're spending time with your friends, and you want them to crack open a cold one with you. You can ask them, "Biero kudasai," and they would pass you a beer. But that would be really rude to say someone in food service, which is why we would use onegai shimasu, formal, and also used as a request for both physical and abstract concepts. So say, I had an explanation in my head, but I don't remember what the explanation was, so I'm going to write out this explanation here. So like, I could write, if you were at a restaurant and you wanted to order food, let's say you wanted to order some curry, you would ask the waitress or waiter, "Kare o onegai shimasu." And note that we're not ending the sentence with des here. And that's going to be something that we're going to get into a lot next lesson. Next week, we're going to be talking a lot more about verbs and conjugation, and how, because we have an actual verb in the sentence now, onegai shimasu, we don't need to end the sentence with this. So this reads as "Kare o onegai shimasu," or please, or a better translation would be I'll have the curry, please. So that is the difference between Kudasai and Onegaishimasu. At first glance, they both seem like they're just asking please, but one of them is a lot more rude to use than the other. So if you're ever unsure, just stick with Onegaishimasu. The next topical thing I want to talk about, I briefly touched upon this 2 weeks ago. I talked about the numbers. I talked about the numbers 1 through 10, but I want to delve a little bit deeper with that today. So let's open this up. I feel like this might take a bit. So to review, our numbers are... Let me actually write out the numbers 1 through 10 first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1 is Ichi. I'm going to write in parentheses the... What am I doing? This is Ichi. 2 is Ni. 3 is San. Looks pretty straightforward so far. 1 line, 2 line, 3 lines. And yes, San is 3, and San is also the honorific we use when referring to most people. There's a lot of overlap in words in Japanese. 4, things get off the rail here. This is Yon. 5 is... Oh, really gets off the rails here. Go. Ich ni san yon go. 6 is Roku. Wrong character. There's a lot of similarities in the characters too. I accidentally wrote Ruku, but this is Roku. 7 is Nana. 'Let me actually move 8, 9, and 10 down. I think I wrote them a little bit too close. I should actually figure out the hotkeys for this, because it would be a lot easier for me. 8 is Hachi. 9 is Q. 8, wrong direction. Even I still mess this up sometimes. Believe it's Q with an extra U like that. Let me just make sure. I should know this by now. I shouldn't have to look back at my notes, but sometimes you just forget little things like that. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it has the extra U. Oh, very good question. Yes, when counting, 4 is also she, and I will talk about that as well. There is a difference. Let me just do this. And 10 is Ju. J-Y-U-U. So, very, very, very good point to bring up, Asmodeus. 4 is Yon, and it's also she. There are alternate readings for a lot of terms. Yon and she is a very common one for 4. There's also for 7, there is Shichi. And for 9, there's also Ku. there's not really a difference here. I think it's just one of them became more common than the others. I know a lot of people who are into anime and stuff like that, a lot of Japanese fiction, will know that 4 represents death because shi is also a word that means death. So both 4 and 7, you'll note, have alternate readings, and those alternate readings actually are the ones that are more used now. But people still will use shi and shichi for different things. Certain words, like numbering words, have like these really, really, really like specific ways that we count them. Like when we talk about time, we refer to like 1 o'clock is ichiji, 2 o'clock is niji, 3 o'clock is sanji, and then 4 o'clock is yoji. Sometimes certain letters change based on what we're counting, and that usually just has to do with the phonetics, with the characters that come after it. There's not really... I don't know enough about the language to exactly know why exactly there is such a difference, but I do know that the difference exists. But I think if you were to say either way, your meaning would still be understood, especially in writing, since I guess you wouldn't be able to tell which way they were going to pronounce it anyway. So these are the numbers 1 through 10. Let me see if I can... Let me make this smaller. I do want to talk about something real quick here. Because obviously, we're going to need to know some numbers that are bigger than 1 through 10. More than what we count on our 2 hands. Let me adjust the size of this canvas. This is still pretty readable on my OBS, so... there we go. We'll do that. And I want to talk about some of the bigger magnitudes of 10. Because, I mean, as always, if we want to count higher, we need to know 100, we need to know 1,000, 10,000, and so on. So what we're going to talk about are the following. There's also 100, which would be yaku. 100. That's hyaku. There is 1,000, which is sen. Very close to san, but 2 different numbers by a fairly large degree. That's 1,000. There's man. You see this a lot when people are celebrating very big milestones. This is man. Which is 10,000. And this is going to throw you for a loop. No, the next power of 10 that we're going to talk about is not 100,000. The next counting number that they have for powers is... And this one's really tricky to write too. This is oku. Oku. Which we go from 10,000 to 100, comma 000, comma 000. We go from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100 million. It's a very big gap. Also, if you know, I know that there's a very famous song. I remember back in like 2008, there was that popular song inspired by the Dr. Wily Fortress music from Mega Man 2 called Okusenman. Okusenman. Or, I believe, since it's Senman, it's 1,000 10,000s. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it would be... That would be 110 million. And that's what the title of the song was. That they were talking, I think, about the power of his youth being 110 million. Or the feelings that you gave me were 110 million. Which, I don't know if there was some special meaning behind that. But it was a really catchy song. Regardless. I want to talk about, actually now, bigger numbers. Because as you can see, when we get to, say, 100, it makes sense. We go to 1,000, makes sense. 10,000, still makes sense. And then, how are we going to get to 100,000? The way this works is the following. Let me readjust this. This works like this. Let's resize this a little bit to give us more space. And I cut off part of the 10,000. That's fine. So what we get here, say I wanted to do the number 345,678. The way this works is that we sort of have to break this down by each individual place value. We're gonna do 300,000. Actually, since we don't have a number for 100,000, what we're gonna do is use our biggest term that we can, in this case the 10,000, and we're gonna say 340,000. You have to look at it like this, kind of like you're breaking down a math problem from like second grade when we first learn about place values. Actually, I think that might be first grade. I don't remember what year it is that little kids learn how to do place values. I only teach high school. I don't know what happens down at that lower level. 5,000 times 600. 6 times 100. 7 times 10. And then... Oh, this is supposed to be 78. And then 8. So the way we would write this out, we have 34 times 10,000. The way we say this... What happened? My tablet. To say 34 times 10,000, we would say... Sanju... Sanjuyon Man. See how it's just taking those characters from each of them? San being 3, Ju being 10, Sanju being 30, Sanjuyon, 30 and 4 is 34. Sanjuyon Man means 34 times 10,000, or 340,000. That's probably the hardest one out of these because it uses a double-digit number. 5 times 1,000, we know 5 is go. 1,000 is sen, so go sen. Like the ending to that one Host Club anime, where the first line they say is go sen mairu hashite. I run and run 5,000 miles. 6 times 100, we have 100, we know that's hyaku. Roku is 6. So this is actually going to kind of throw you for a loop. Certain words, like I said earlier when I was talking about the example with the different pronunciations, Roku actually becomes ro hyaku. Rokyaku. Instead of roku hyaku. The way some consonants fall, I think whoever decided how the Japanese language works, there's a lot of consistencies in what words sort of get abbreviated like this, what words sort of have their sounds like muddled. The ku sound very often, when it's compounded with the H sounds. Ku and chi and tsu are very common examples of this muddling. If they're right adjacent to each other, usually that ku sound will get turned into a sort of doubled consonant. And let me actually write out what this reads as. Sanju yon man. Very long number. Gosen. Ropyaku. So that little tsu there, that little symbol there means that we double up on that consonant sound of this p, of this pya. 7 times 10 is going to be nanaju. That's nanaju. And then obviously 8 is just achi. So if you wanted to read out 345,678 in English, or in Japanese, I just read it in English, it would be 34,5678. It's kind of a mouthful. I feel like it sounds longer than in English, because unlike in English, Japanese doesn't have a term for each place value. So instead of being able to say like 300,000, or instead of being able to combine it easily, like we just say 345,000 for that one whole place value, we say it individually for each tens place until we don't have a tens place term to refer to them as that. So once we get past 10,000, we start having to break it down in ways that I honestly don't know how I would count past a million. I think I would get stumped there too. I think I have to study up a little bit more on any numbers that enter the millions. But for the case of the first 6 digits, that's how we would break it down. We would use the double-digit version of whatever number we have in the front. So those first 2 numbers would be used with man, to represent 100,000s. And then we would just go down the list from there with sen, hyaku, ju, and the singular digits. And yeah, that's really what I want to talk about today. Those were the topics that I intended to cover. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this, I guess this is going to be the last thing I want to talk about, because I think one of the most daunting things about learning Japanese, and I talked about this on my first stream, is that you have to learn 2 different alphabets. You have to learn hiragana, and you have to learn katakana. Those families of characters, they're not easy to learn. Or I guess it depends on your time, the time that you have available to you. I think it took me maybe... I wasn't studying like dedicatedly or anything, but I think after about a week of studying, I had the entire hiragana table memorized just by like using flashcards. I was just using flashcard apps on my phone, and like I mostly had hiragana and katakana down. But beyond that, there's a whole demon that is kanji that a lot of people are pretty scared of. Yeah, I think it was a week. It might have been 2 weeks. Yeah, and hiragana is easier than katakana. There's also a lot of different techniques that you gotta use. I talked about it back in my first stream. Because of the way the language works, the characters are, there's a lot of helpful techniques when you like see similar looking characters. Like, I talked about this last week, or I guess, oh my god, it's been 4 weeks ago almost. Like how the characters wa, re, and ne, these all look very similar, and when you note that kind of similarity, know that how to not get thrown off by them, it like helps store in your memory those characters better. It makes it easier for you to remember, at the very least, I don't want to cross myself up on these. And similarly, things like knowing that ta looks like this, na looks like this. You know, na is the one with the squiggle, ta is the one that doesn't have the squiggle. Oh my god, yeah. Sa and chi. It's a little easier for me because on like most fonts that get typed out, sa gets written like this. But there are some cases where you'll see sa written like this, and chi is always written like this. So it really is just a mirror of each other. What also helps me for sa is that I know sa and ki are in the same direction, but ki just has one extra line there. So these are like little important things that when you're first learning the language, they're like helpful, like, I guess, I don't know if I would call them mnemonic devices, but they're like patterns. There's also things like ne, and then this is nu. You can see nu has that little loop, and ne also has that little loop, and na has that loop. So you can remember that all those n characters, those n consonants, you can remember them by the fact that they're all looping like that. Na, ne, nu. Unfortunately, not all the na characters have that. Ni looks like this, and no also loops. So I have never taken the JLPT. It's mostly the fact that I'm not particularly confident in what I know, because I've taken like practice tests, and I think the thing that throws me off the most, and something that I want to talk about, is that the kanji reading. I'm very confident in my ability to like discern the meaning of sentences with grammar and particles, but like I'll look at a practice test, and despite the fact that I've been using like WaniKani for a long amount of time, the thing about apps like WaniKani is that you can't really control what kanji you're learning as you would with like Anki. Anki, you have the decks that you make, which actually, now that I know that that's how that works, I might be more inclined to do that. But yeah, I've never really taken the JLPT. I've been meaning to. I might take it at the end of the year just to see where I place after all my studies. But if I had to like estimate based on my ability to read and communicate, I wouldn't say I'm anywhere higher than N4, if even that. I try my best to like communicate with like Japanese content creators, like on Twitter and on YouTube and everything. And whenever I communicate with them, I always like try to at the very least make sure that I type out what I'm gonna say. Unlike where you type in English into DeepL and hope that it comes out with the cohesive Japanese phrase, I like type my Japanese into DeepL and then see what the English translation comes out as. And if it gives me a coherent sentence, I'll be like, right, I can talk to this person. And then I'll send them the message, and usually they're really nice about it, so I can't tell if I'm really bad at it or if they're really nice. So that's what I wanted to get to next. It's actually a very good way to springboard me into the topic, so thanks, Asmodeus. What I wanted to mention, back when I first talked about learning kanji, WaniKani is what I've been using for a long time, and it's built in a way so that it gives you a lot of different kanji of different difficulties, but the difficulty generally builds up from like simple kanji, and then it works its way up there. But the thing about WaniKani is that there is no control over what kanji you learn. So that's the downside. Anki, on the other hand, has decks of different kanji. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never used Anki. I've just like browsed like different Japanese learning resources, and I've heard them refer to the decks before, so I believe that these are community made. So let me know if I'm wrong. But that was the interpretation that I got there. So Anki has these decks that you can practice off of, and it, I believe, uses the same system that Wanikani does, where you learn the deck, you learn the words, and then they have you put it down for a couple hours, then you come back to it. Then the time in between reviewing the words gets longer and longer until eventually you have it memorized. So those are the two tools. Another thing I want to note that I think is worth talking about, let me pull this up. I want to pull up a tab. Let me get a new source here. Window capture. And let me get Chrome. And we're gonna use... That's not what I want. There we go. So there's two other things I want to talk about that it's what I actually like started with when I first wanted to learn Japanese, so I thought they would be helpful, and in retrospect, I think it was nice to use this. On Jisho, you can see that they let you look up adjectives and terms by their JLPT level, as well as their elementary school grade level. What's good about this is that you can sort of get an understanding of what kind of kanji you learn, like what like a first grader learns. And you can see I've used these before, like the number 1 is used, the kanji for day, which is hi or nichi, the kanji for person. It's very simple things, very general things that people would learn because like they're just life words. And oh, thank you for the follow, Asmodeus. Welcome to the classroom. Or I guess you've been in the classroom for a while. And you can see there's a lot of different kanji here, but Wanikani will get you through this and get to this eventually, but like, I believe if it's... Usually, like, let me just do this real quick. Like, see, if you look up the kanji, it says taught in grade 1, JLPT level N5, and N5 is like the easiest Japanese language proficiency test you can take. Let me just look up this here. Jisho itself is a very, 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 very useful tool because it gives you a lot of information about the kanji that you learn as you want to learn it. Like here, Tsuki, common word. It's an N. It's saying it's N3, but it just said earlier that it was N5. And that Wanikani will teach you this at level 2. We go to other kanji. There are some kanji that I'm pretty sure, like, if I go to the grade 2 kanji, for example, I'm pretty sure there's things that, like, I haven't covered in my kanji practice apps that makes Anki look a lot more appealing, because you can work with decks that do go over these. Actually, I do think I have gone over most of these, yeah. I thought there was something that I remember, like, copying that I never learned, or I realized I never went over in Wanikani, or it took a while. Like, this is a grade 2 kanji, but, like, this is also on Wanikani. You don't learn this until... Oh, it's not listed here, but I'm pretty sure it's, like, level, like, 12 or 13 or 14, where they go over this kanji, even though it's a grade 2 kanji. So, I think I would recommend, honestly, like, Wanikani is nice because it gives you good exposure to different vocabulary, but I think it's also important to explore other avenues of learning in order to sort of get a bigger picture, get a bigger understanding. It's like having, like, Anki decks where they could be sorted by grade level or by JLPT level. Like, if we look at that, the JLPT N5 kanji, you can see it tags things that we need to know. Like, this is Gakko, that's school. River, very simple kanji. And these are all very important. And it's not like I can really exactly, like, go over all this kanji as lessons, because that would take very long. But while I've been going through all the grammar stuff, one of the most important things that you also need to do is make sure that you are going over kanji. I think it's a very, like, I wouldn't say it's, like, non-committal, but it's very, like, you could spend a couple minutes a day working on it, practicing it and reviewing it, and as long as you keep it at a consistent rate, as long as you keep yourself exposed to like learning the kanji, remembering how to type in Japanese and that Japanese syllabary, I think doing it bit by bit, day by day, you'll really see improvements on your ability to like read and also like write the kanji, recognize the characters. And here's something I wanted to bring up. This is a JLPT N5 kanji, or compound word, megane. Megane, we know megane is glasses. But if you look, this is Wanikani level 34. I've been going at Wanikani like really slowly. I guess I'll just say it right now. I think it's been almost 2 years. I'm only on level 20 because I've slack off a lot and I get into intervals of working and not working. But at that pace, I wouldn't see this kanji from Wanikani until like another year from now. So it's very important, like especially if you want to study to pass these tests, that you study in different ways, that you take different routes to sort of learn. Because otherwise, you might not get to certain things. This one, tabako, I think would be written using kana alone, so you wouldn't need to recognize that kanji. And I guess megane also might be written with hiragana. So maybe as long as you know the vocab word, you'd be fine. But I still think it's important to expose yourself through multiple different programs. Let's see if there's anything else that's really, like, out there. Kodomo? That's child. Again, might be written with kana alone, but you can see children. It's a level 24 word, so, like, that takes a lot of time to get there. Yet, it's on the first Japanese proficiency test. So I would say it's very much worth it if you really want to study Japanese, that you use those resources. Use what you can find and just practice, practice, practice every day. I really do enjoy teaching this, but I can only really teach the grammar part of it with this lesson. Teaching the vocab would be a whole nother thing. It might be a fun, interesting thing to do on the side, like, I don't know, maybe on Twitter do like a kanji of the day, where I like have my character here with the board and I just draw out the kanji and just do short videos like that. There's an app where I can read actual news in Japanese and it's got hiragana and katakana. Oh, you mean so it has like the furigana over the kanji, so it so you can read like the kanji that you might not know? Because yeah, that's always really helpful. Like that's why a lot of people I've seen will recommend that you read like Shonen Jump manga, like seriously read Shonen Jump manga, because like a lot of times they'll like use a word, like say they'll use a word, why is it writing like this? Please stop. Like it would write out the word, like, just to use one that we talked about earlier, like it would say the word we talked about earlier for stream, haishin. And then, like, a lot of books will do this, and then above it, it'll say hi, so you know that that's how you're reading the first word, and then shin, haishin. So furigana, if you can read any, like, sources that, like, have that furigana, it's also helpful to get, like, see those more widely used kanji. Like they say, I think it's about 20,000 kanji that you really need to know for, like, general usage. Is it 20,000 or 2,000? I can't remember. 2,000 seems really low, but 20,000 seems really high. Regardless, it's just important. It's like if you learned how to write letters in English, but you didn't learn any important vocab words. And like that's really the thing about it, especially when you learn the individual kanji. Once you start learning this and learning their alternate readings, you can really use that, and like there are times where like I'll be introduced to a new kanji on Wanikani, and I'll already know the reading of it. I'll already know how to say it because I've seen the kanjis used in a lot of other different contexts, and I just know at that point what to do. And sometimes I'll be wrong. Sometimes there are really specific like alternate readings that get used in different words, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to be spot on with what reading you're expected to use. So that's it. And I think maybe I will do that, a kanji of the day kind of thing. I think that would be pretty fun to do as a side, just to talk and give people more exposure to like hiragana, give more people exposure to like kanji, And I think it would just be fun little content to make on the side. But yeah, I think that's it for today. I've gone through chapters 1 and 2 of my book. I've talked a little bit about some extra stuff, and I think that's it. Next week, we're going to be talking about some verb conjugation stuff, and that's probably going to be a bit of a longer lesson. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I'll be live next week, same time, 6 p.m. EST on Thursday, and hopefully I'll see you then. Have a great rest of your night, everybody, and class is dismissed.